U.S. government has a message for their personnel posted in China. Maintain a strong relationship with our allies, but it must be platonic.
American diplomats, their families, and security-cleared contractors in China and Hong Kong are banned from engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with Chinese citizens. According to the Associated Press, the policy took effect in January, shortly before US Ambassador Nicholas Burns left his post in Beijing.
At the Institute of Politics Forum earlier this week, Burns had this to say about maintaining strong relationships with U.S. allies.
4 words. Be nice to allies. Seriously. Be nice to allies. Here's the reason I say that. When you're in a competition, this is an epic, multi-decade competition. If we did a typical exercise here at the Kennedy School, if we asked the students, okay, objectively, on a series of matrices, who's more powerful, the US or China? Military power, tech power, and Graham and his studies have done a lot of this. Soft power, economic and trade power. It's pretty close. The Chinese line publicly is, oh, the United States is more powerful. I think we're near peer competitors.
But back to the spicier topic of personal relationships. Some US agencies did have strict rules on such relationships, but not a blanket ban. A non-fraternization mandate, as it is euphemistically known, has been unheard of since the Cold War.
The new directive mandates that anyone with an existing Chinese partner seek an exemption, end the relationship, or leave their post if the exemption is denied.
The US government's non-fraternization policies for other countries are unknown, as they are considered classified.
I'm glad that you had to read the fraternization, because I don't think I could have done that twice.
we don't mind excessive fraternization in certain quarters, but apparently not with China. I mean, look, it's a fun story in one respect. I also think it gets to, we were talking earlier on in this show about TikTok and about Chinese government maneuvers and so forth. Of course, the oldest maneuvers in the book are still in place, which is people being honeypotted, seduced by enemy agents. I mean, if that's a problem, I guess it's a valid problem to try to create a deterrence against. I tend to think that it would be fine to trust people to simply report such relationships, and I'm not sure how closely the ban is going to be complied with, but it's an interesting idea for sure.
Yeah, I don't have any outright objections to this at all. Back in 2020, Axios did that bombshell report about Fang Fang, who was a Chinese agent who was getting close to several Midwestern mayors who she allegedly had sexual relationships with. She tried to help Ro Khanna get into Congress back in 2014. He ended up winning in 2016, and most notably had some kind of relationship with Eric Swalwell. We don't know the nature of that, but was helping him fundraise for his campaign, placed at least one intern in his office while he was serving on the House Intelligence Committee. So this is not unheard of for China to activate agents to get close to Americans, whether romantically or otherwise, in a way of either implementing blackmail, gathering intelligence, or otherwise trying to compromise them. So this seems pretty common sense to me. I haven't heard any real outcry about it at this point.
No, I think it's a story that excites a certain amount of prurient interest, to be perfectly honest. Look, the honeypotting, as you talk about, I mean, that has gone on, obviously, in the Cold War and for many, many years. One of the things that I was intrigued by whenever I was researching this was that one of the reasons there had been a blanket ban a generation ago, instilled or installed in 1987, after a US Marine was seduced by a Soviet agent. And that was a blanket ban on relationships with people in the Soviet bloc or in China. But it was relaxed in 1991 as the Cold War came to an end. So these things have a tradition, if we can call it that. I suppose I just feel the kind of idea of, like, we're going to ban you from this. Are people always going to confess who they have romantic or sexual entanglements with? I'm skeptical of that, but the policy itself, I understand the reason for.
Yeah, same. I think probably what's happened is that self-reporting is not going well.
Right, I would imagine that.
So they've decided to go ahead and issue the outright ban so that there are consequences for people if they find out they haven't been reporting perhaps more significant consequences than if there were just these exceptions to the rule. But it's, again, well known that China does do things like this. They send students to United States universities to steal research secrets and intellectual property and send it back to the CCP. And they use activated agents to get close to people who have access to intelligence information and report that back to the CCP. There's really no lengths at which they will not go to try to diminish U.S. influence, or at least take the secrets that the U.S. knows and use them for their own benefit. So again, I don't have a problem with it.
I noticed that the ban also does encompass family members of US personnel, so I suspect that will make postings to China slightly less popular with people in late adolescence, the kids of diplomats and so on, hormones flying all over the place and banned from doing anything about it, at least with Chinese citizens. But
we'll see if there's any outcry against it. I haven't seen anything just yet. Maybe there's some intelligence official in China right now who's about to get married, and they're going to get denied an exception or something and be really upset.
Or maybe there's some libertarian objection to.
Maybe so. If only Robbie were here, he could inform us.
Argue for the overreach of government on romantic relationships with Chinese citizens. We have a lot more topics to talk about on Rising right after this.